Welcome into On Texas Football. Time to talk a little Longhorns. Actually, yesterday they lose a tough one to the Florida Gators, 29-21. Florida takes the game over the Longhorns. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Gerry Hamilton. This episode brought to you by Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. Gerry, let's just get into it. Texas, according to Brian Robeson, according to Gerry Hamilton, according to anybody that watched that game, gets whipped on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the lines of scrimmage, in my opinion. What'd you have to think about that game?
Yeah, this is as concerning of a performance as I've seen out of Texas football in a while, because they got on a plane and know it's pretty much a must-win game. You already have one loss in the bag, and you're down to one margin for error game. You go into Gainesville knowing you need to win this game. It's a must-win game. And to physically lose the battle and get whipped, not lose the battle. I mean, they got whipped on both lines of scrimmage, and it was more than that. It was at most positions on the field. I mean, there were some corners that got physically whipped by wide receivers in this game. Florida dominated this game physically. So before you get into anything else we're going to talk about in this game, in this conference, or even in the Big Ten or in the SEC, if you get whipped physically, you aren't going to win the game unless you're just uber talented and you're playing against a team that can't even stay on the field with you. So it doesn't matter. But in a game where talent is close and similar, and you get beat physically all the way around before you make the other errors in this game, it's going to look ugly. And it looked ugly despite 29-21 final.
Yeah, it was 29-21. Game didn't feel that close.
No.
It was a one-score game, and the game literally didn't feel that close. Florida kind of went ahead and hid from Texas a little bit, and then their offense sputtered late, and Lagway threw a pick. I would say this as it relates to it. I thought the defense tried to make some adjustments. I would tell you that their running back broke tackles. No running back from Texas broke a tackle. I mean, the Texas running backs, Gerry, to talk about the lack of physicality in the Texas run game, the Texas running backs rushed for a grand total of 15 yards on Saturday. That's ridiculously low. That's not going to win an SEC game, to your point. And I think that we got to look at that. Defensively, at least they showed a spine, I thought, against the run. They had to bring more hats into the box, but at least they showed a spine. And at the end of the day, though, Florida's offense had its way with the Texas defensive line. And when Texas had to throw, the Florida defensive line had its way with the Texas offensive line in pass protection. I feel like it's a little bit of a broken record here in that we're saying, we saw some signs of improvement from Arch Manning. We really did. I mean, I thought you played this Arch Manning against Ohio State. Texas has a much better chance of winning. Arch played 2.5 to 3 good quarters, I thought, of football. He was taking hit after hit, though, Gerry. He can't sustain that over a long period of time in this conference. You can't do it. And yet there we are. And the result is the result. Let's look a little bit of the stats, Gerry, and tell me some of the things that came to your mind when you were seeing this. 457 yards of total offense for the Gators, 341 for the Longhorns. Brian Robeson pointed this out in the postgame too. Gerry, 172 yards after the catch by Florida receivers. Crazy number.
Yeah.
What did you think? I thought that while we can talk about the Texas offensive line, the thing that really surprised me the most was actually the Texas defense getting worked by that Gator offense.
Well, and especially considering Florida had 140 yards 2 weeks ago, and like 80 of it came on one drive. They couldn't do diddly poo against Miami offensively. They couldn't move the ball, couldn't get a first down, 0 for 13 on third downs. So 2 weeks later, did they improve that much? No, they didn't, but they physically whipped Texas. And that's a game of winning physically. And what was interesting to me is, it's almost like Texas came out defensively in this game and just thought, we can play 4-man front and play our corners off 10 yards and we're going to be fine against this team. Did the Texas staff underestimate their opponent? Quite possibly, because that's what it looked like from the first drive of the game. when you
Well,
just come out, you're playing off easy completions for a quarterback that had very little confidence. Then they ran the ball down your throat on top of it. It seems to me like there was some overconfidence coming into this game as well.
here's another thing to ask. You mentioned that 0 for 13 against Miami. Not only were they 0 for 13 against Miami, but also they were 4 for 4 on third down in their first drive against Texas. That was the kind of start, because you talked earlier in the week, whichever quarterback and offense starts quickly first is going to have a big upper hand. There's no doubt about it. Florida started more quickly than the Texas Longhorns. All right, we're going to talk about some other keys to the game yesterday as well. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsor. Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm has been helping injured Texans for 20 plus years now. He is a guy that if you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind and think you might be due compensation, make sure you reach out to him for a free, no strings attached consultation. Again, that's loweylawfirm.com, loweylawfirm.com, helping injured Texans for 20 plus years. Thank you very much, Adam, for your sponsorship on Texas football, making shows like this possible. Jerry, going further into this, the other piece that I really had a problem with on Saturday, execution / discipline. I think 6 offensive line penalties, procedure penalties. You had missed opportunities multiple times, whether it was a double pass or what was another one? A couple of missed punt chances to be down inside the 5 to change momentum. You caused a fumble early, couldn't pounce on it. There were like execution and discipline issues combined. And here we are again at the end of Saturday, and we're looking at a situation where Texas had 10 penalties.
Yeah.
And this is through 5 games, it is a highly undisciplined team when it comes to penalties, and they're not executing. I think that they execute this game better, even as good as Florida played. Texas wins this game, but they did not execute.
No, and I think, look, for a fan base and the as you can imagine, the in-game watch with us, that's where the emotion comes out. And for a fan base, the 2 most difficult things to live with for a fan base in the game of football are when you get out physical, and then it's just the penalties, the lack of execution. If you do those 2 things combined, if you get out physical on both lines of scrimmage, and there's just the continuation of the same penalties and the lack of discipline, that's when fan bases have a real tough time. The fan bases are okay with, they don't expect perfection from players, right? Somebody's going to drop a pass. Arch is going to make a bad read. Arch is going to hold the ball too long. Offensive lineman's going to miss a block, I should say. But it's when you combine getting physically whipped and then the lack of discipline, those are the 2 things that make it really tough on a fan base. And I felt all that in the watch with us, and you saw that in real time. And especially in the second half, it's like, when Arch threw the 1 interception, the first interception, I believe it was, they had a good play. They got a first down. Then they immediately got 2 false pre-snap penalties in a row and set it right back to 1st and 20, right? Well, then you can bring the pressure again. Texas can hurt themselves more than they've helped themselves this year. And that's a simple way to look at it, but they've hurt themselves more than they've helped themselves this season on the football field.
Yeah, absolutely at times. That's the case, because if you look at it, one thing I would say to add to your piece is they're just not doing themselves any favors.
No.
And when you lose that opportunity, again, there was a 3rd and 1 that became a 3rd and 6.
Yes.
Things like that. Now they ended up, I think, converting on that 3rd and 6, so the drive stayed alive. But that's not the point.
No.
The point is that you're doing those little things that maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, where the team was older, more experienced, had a 2nd and 3rd year starter at quarterback. We'll see. I have another question for you. If you could take one player off that Florida team and put him on the Texas team, who would it be right now? I would take Jaden Ball, unquestioned.
I would have said before the game Saturday, leading up to the game, I would have said Jaden Ball. But the morning after the game, I might take Dallas Wilson. It's close. Probably Jaden Ball, but Dallas Wilson is even better than I thought he was.
Yeah, I would take Jaden Ball because I think he makes people miss in the run game. And Texas right now just has no run game whatsoever. I mean, even if they could eke out 2 or 3 yards as opposed to 0 or a holding call, because Weiser has to pop it outside because there's no space on the inside, I think it would be helpful. And I mention that in part because we've talked about this at length, and Texas just not making big plays from the backfield right now. They are at wide receiver. Some of that happened on Saturday with Parker Livingston coming up with a terrific catch. Really was a great juggling catch with the guy bearing down on him. Also, you look at Emmett Mosley, saw some action on Saturday. I thought he looked good. I thought Ryan Wingo made a nice play on a deep ball. Probably was open a couple more times. Could have made a catch down the sidelines, but missed. But overall, DeAndre Moore made a nice run after catch. I think it's the backfield is not productive. Again, that 15 yards total, Jerry, is just not enough production. And whether that's offensive line, scheme, or what have you, I mean, there were no wham blocks today, by the way. I don't know if you noticed that. No Nick Townsend. I said today. God damn it. There were no wham blocks on Saturday. I don't know if you noticed that, but no Nick Townsend, no power run like that. What I would call counters. What does that mean? I mean, what does that say? You weren't confident enough in that kind of play to run it during the game?
Yeah, I definitely think some of that played out. And look, they got Mekhi Borio back Saturday, the big 6'5", 350-pounder who's a load over the ball. Florida the problem running the football on Saturday for Texas was they could never get a hat to a linebacker. We talked about it going into the game. The linebackers are running free a lot of times in the run game.
Whereas the Texas linebackers were not running free.
No.
Hill had 14 tackles, Jerry, but they were all 5 yards downfield.
Yeah, I mean, and so there's just not enough wins at the line of scrimmage and again, whether that's scheme, number one, it's lack of physicality there. I mean, this is a physical league, and one team brought a level of physicality on Saturday that Texas didn't even see that against Ohio State. Florida brought a level of physicality like Georgia did in Austin last year. Saturday. Yeah. That's what it looked like to me, a physical beatdown.
Maybe that's the blueprint at some level for teams. Go out and just try to out physical a Sark team that likes to kind of outsmart you, maybe a little too much. Yeah, we'll see if
here's the thing, Bobby. Even though Texas didn't make DJ Lagway uncomfortable Saturday, he still tried to gift him a little bit at the end, throwing the ill-advised interception up 15 points with 6 minutes to go, a ball he should have never thrown. So Florida tried to give you opportunities as well in the fourth. I was thinking about something. It's kind of reminded me of the Washington playoff game where late there's a turnover that should have never happened. Then there's kind of a botched clock situation potentially where you get the ball one last time. And then on that last drive, I got to say, I thought Arch Manning showed some signs Saturday, but he's got to do a better job of getting the ball out of his hand, especially in critical downs and distances or situations in a game. I mean, that has to grow for him. And I know he was under duress a lot, and I get it. He was hit on many of his throws, but there comes a point in time where you got to get the ball out of your hand or you got to run it out of bounds for 5 yards. And, that last pick that was dropped, you just got to run it for 6 yards to get out of bounds. I mean, there's got to be more recognition there.
Yeah, fair. I think that's all fair. One other thing I want to mention, Jerry, last night, I don't know if you saw that yet this morning, but Brent Venables said in his post-game commentary after the Sooners beat up on Kent State that he assumes John Mateer is going to be unable to play against the Longhorns. That's the Sooners quarterback this coming weekend. If Texas, and I say all of this, if Texas goes and plays Oklahoma like they played Florida on Saturday and is not more physical, even without John Mateer, you worry that it's going to be the same result. Texas has to be, to your point, become more physical at the point of attack because they were literally manhandled by a Florida defense that is good. They played well even late until fourth quarter against Miami. They dominated LSU. They played really well against South Florida, except for one drive late. That's not the recipe for success in Dallas.
No, I said on the watch with us Saturday, and I'm going to say this all week. After you get physically beat down, and the scoreboard doesn't show it, but the game, anybody watch the game knows what we're talking about. If Texas doesn't come in 6 days with the most physical football game they've played in a long time, then they may just not have it. Because this is the ultimate. You got physically beat down on both sides of the ball and at some skill positions yesterday, by the way. And you're going to come into a rivalry game against Oklahoma, and you know Oklahoma's a hungry team. They got blown out last year. And that defensive line, Jaden Jackson, R. Mason Thomas, those linebackers, and Brent Venables is going to be like, hey, babe, meet at the quarterback. Go beat them up physically. If Texas cannot match physicality in that game in the Cotton Bowl in 6 days, Texas has an issue because you shouldn't even have to motivate your players after that butt whipping physically yesterday in the Swamp. They should come with the most physical game they've played in quite some time.
They need to because they're 3-2 and the margin for error just went to 0, basically. One last thought, Jerry. Nick Brooks inserted into the game in the second quarter, the left guard. It did not look like Connor Stroh was injured, by the way. It looked like literally they went with Nick Brooks at left guard in the second quarter, and Texas scored on the first possession there. He then had some real problems in pass pro late, giving up a pair of sacks, got a couple of back-to-back procedures. Again, the problem I have there is if Nick Brooks was one of your best 5, he should have been there earlier in the season to get more experience. Yeah. What are your thoughts on Nick Brooks and the insertion there?
Well, I think the left guard at Texas is going to have a Jaden Jackson problem in 6 days because Oklahoma is going to line Jaden Jackson up if it's me over that left guard and say, come and get it, boys, because Jaden Jackson's a man. And whoever is on that left guard, I think is about to be truly challenged by a guy that'll play 10 years in the NFL in 6 days. And look, I think Nick Brooks has a very bright future. He is going to make some mistakes in real time, but I think what he can bring to you over the course of the season and his career is worth it to invest in. But at the same time, look, I mean, that's a strenuous situation. There's some down and distances in a game where in pass pro, it's going to worry you. But look, what they can get from him, I think, in the run game and just being able to hold up, even if he's not moving people initially, being able to hold up in the run game is something that's very much needed for this team right now.
Yeah, recipe for success, in my opinion, you and I can, I think, agree on this. Physicality needs to amp up a true notch or two for Texas on both sides of the ball, probably a little more so on offense, to be honest, but defense got whipped on Saturday. We know that. And then also execution and discipline.
Yeah.
That's really basic. They got to do more things right.
And Bob, the other thing that's going to be talked about all week, because this game isn't not even 24 hours in the rearview mirror, but it has to be when Oklahoma is your next game. Oklahoma hasn't been able to run the ball on anybody.
Yep.
They're able to run the ball on Texas. That's real problems.
Yeah.
Because, Jaden Ball's a great player, even though he had 12 for 46 against Miami and LSU shut down the Florida run game. That guy's a 10-year NFL running back if he stays healthy. Oklahoma doesn't have that on their roster. If they're able to run the ball against Texas, that's real issues.
Yeah, I thought one of the big things, and I mentioned this earlier in our text during the game on Saturday, I said multiple times the Texas defensive tackles were just not getting off blocks.
They did not get
I
off
can
blocks.
remember one time all game the Texas defensive tackles got penetration of any level, and that was Cole Brevard on a pass play.
Yep.
So we'll see. To your point, we'll have to wait and see. More physicality, better execution, better discipline.
And my last point on this is there hasn't been a point in time in the last 2+ seasons now, realistically, maybe after that first Georgia game in Austin, where the culture has had their back to the wall that's been built on this team.
Ooh, that's
This
a good point.
culture has their back to the wall for the first time, I think, right now. Because that Georgia game, look, Texas had still had the win over Michigan, right? There were things were rolling. And then Georgia came to town and physically gave Texas one. They gave them a little beating, right? Texas came back and ended up going 11-1, right? Getting to the SEC title game. This is the first time that physically Ohio State, then this game, and I'm not sure Ohio State physically beat Texas. They won the football game, but 2 losses right now. The culture's back is against the wall. This is a big week for Steve Sarkisian as a head coach because he's going to see where his program really is at because they're being tested in a way they hadn't been in a while right now.
They did not go out Saturday with a sense of urgency, in my opinion. To your point, if they don't go out with one against Oklahoma, this team may not have a pulse.
Yeah.
Because their back is, and their culture is up against the wall. All right, that's going to do it for this Rapid Reactions. Thank you to our sponsor yet again. That is Adam Lowy over the Lowy Law Firm. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind and think you might be due compensation, reach out to Adam and his group for a free, no strings attached consultation. That is Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm, LowyLawFirm.com. Just reach out to Adam in his group. All right, Jerry, we'll be back a little bit later today. We got a couple more things. We got grades coming up. We also, those aren't going to be pretty. We didn't even get the special teams, Jerry.
Matt's got an easy job, F.
Then we also have this afternoon, second watch with Rod Baber, see what he thought about the secondary, especially all those yards after catch. And then tonight, later, you and Rod Babers get together and talk about the game as well as the game coming up with Oklahoma and take folks' questions on the live stream at 7 o'clock. For Gerry Hamilton and our producer, Matt Hamilton, thank you also to our sponsor, Adam Lowy. I'm Bobby Burton. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em horns.